Imagine you're sitting at the Last Supper. You're a disciple of Jesus Christ. You've walked with him for months, for years. You've been in ministry with him. And he is asking you now to take on his body and his blood. All right, I don't know about you, but that would sound a little bit interesting and a bit unbelievable for me to take on this blood and this body. I don't know how I'd respond to that. With not knowing the full picture of Jesus, you'd probably sit there in the same way, thinking, what is this person saying to me? But when you begin to read the next chapters in Matthew, you begin to understand what Jesus is telling us as believers and the disciples that we are to do when it comes to communion. So, my hope and prayer today is that this video gave you a little bit of laughter at the beginning, but maybe it didn't, because humor is obviously relative to the person that is hearing it. Either you're very excited I made the joke that I made, or you're typing up a comment saying you're not being serious. Regardless of whatever spectrum you are landing on, today I wanted to share with you the reason why we as believers in Jesus Christ should celebrate communion and do it consistently, or at least enough to the point where we are making sure that we are reminding ourselves the power and glorious work of the cross. And why we take communion? Well, it's simple. Jesus shares with us in the Last Supper a very common thing that we should be doing consistently. He shares this with his disciples that we are to take of the blood, which is a symbolic way of taking of the blood is being used with wine. And then we are to take of the bread, which symbolizes his body. So these two things are done in connection with one another. See, I take communion and I look at the blood and I think to myself, okay, so when I take this cup, it is cleansing me of my sin. It is cleansing me of all the things that I have done that have been wrong, that have attributed to the very reason why Jesus was put on that cross. I very much am being cleansed of that when the blood is within me. So I take communion and I take that wine and it cleanses me. It takes and washes away my sin. And as it cleanses me and I have this surface that is brand new and clean, I have this new body that I then take with the bread. This is what communion means to me. And this is what I think the Bible tells us about communion. It is ultimately a celebration, a reminder of the glorious act of Jesus on the cross, dying for our sins so that we can live in glory with him in heaven. And that we have this opportunity to live these lives as these redeemed, sanctified saints. See, the Lord came for those who were sick and in need of a physician, in need of a change of heart. And I believe that communion is an important aspect as believers that we should take maybe a little bit more seriously in our day-to-day walks or just our life, because ultimately it's important for us to be reminded is the importance of what it means to take on this communion, because we ultimately are communing with God. We are basically saying we accept this free gift. We are not only just believing it in our hearts, we are now ultimately taking an act of faith in saying that this cup that the Lord has instituted to us is symbolic of his blood and that this bread is his body. So that is why we celebrate communion, and that is just about all I wanted to share with you today. But I hope that what you got from this is not, hey, you have to do this and it's a must, but be reminded that this is a celebration. This is a glorious moment, and it's very sad. When I think about Jesus on the cross and I think about the death that he paid for me, it gets me emotional at times because I think about the love that it takes for somebody to go on the cross and to die for me and to bleed out and to be in pain. I can't even do that for a person sometimes if they're good to me, let alone if somebody is bad. I did everything possible to make myself away from God, yet he loved me so much that he would send his son Jesus Christ to die for me so that I could live in eternity with him. And all I have to do is confess with my mouth and believe in my heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, and I have the gift that is salvation. That to me is powerful, and I think it is a great way of us celebrating that gift with communion. So I hope today, the next week, that you would take some time, use some of the scriptures that will be provided to you on screen to take this time and be in communion with God and that you would remember the amazing work that Jesus did on the cross for you, me, and the rest of this world, so that we could be once again yoked with the Father forever.